The more I think about it, the more I'm kind of amazed at how much of an impact Super Smash Bros. Melee had on the West. I mean, yeah, the game was super popular and people still play it to this day and whine about how no Smash Bros. Game that comes after it will ever compare. But beyond that, this game was responsible for bringing a bunch of Japanese-only titles to the States. The most standout example is Fire Emblem, of course, but there were a few others as well, such as the custom Robo series. Anyone that played Melee probably got 1 or 2 or 3 trophies in their collection from this game. You playing your game and suddenly you're all, whoa, what's that? That guy's got like a jetpack and robo legs. Man, I wish I could be that guy. So Nintendo looked at this and said, yeah, sure, why not? Let's give him robots. And so they did. It's funny, I think a lot of people have heard of custom Robo just in passing, maybe. Like, maybe they saw it on a shelf or they played Super Smash Bros. Melee and they saw the trophies, but I'm not sure how many people have actually played this game. So, this is Custom Robo. Custom Robo is a 2004 video game for the Nintendo GameCube, published by Nintendo and developed by Noise. In Japan, the game was called Custom Robo Battle Revolution, but in a similar vein to Fire Emblem, this was the first Custom Robo game we received in North America, even though it was 4th in Japan. So in an effort to maybe not confuse Western buyers, the title was just shortened to Custom Robo. Also, in what was possibly an effort to appeal to a more worldwide market, the designs of the Custom Robos got a huge overhaul in this game as well. In previous games, Custom Robos were more or less action figures or dolls. They had cartoony and cute appearances, and the story often followed a younger protagonist who was still in school. That changed in Battle Revolution. The main character is an adult who faces adult problems, like getting a job and paying your rent on time. Not only that, but the Robos look like they came straight out of a more serious mecha anime series like Gundam. I think it's pretty funny the way that localization efforts go to try to appeal to a Western market. It's like they believe that anything that isn't totally hardcore won't fly here. I mean, just look at the way they used to market Kirby.
A fish and an owl in Kirby's Dreamland 2. If you ain't fighting on their side, well man, I'd pity you.
Yeah, good luck sleeping tonight with that face in your dreams. So anyway, the story of Custom Robo begins several years before the game starts. A main character meets up with his dad as a child who gives him a special watch and tells him to never take it off, before abruptly leaving them an orphan. Flash forward several years later, and the main character is now an adult who has to get off his deadbeat ass and go find a job. And this game has already hit home on few too many levels for me. The way the game opens up sets the tone of how every single day of Custom Robo works. The protagonist gets up, woken up by his landlady often, goes into his closet, which proceeds to throw up on him, and then goes off to work to settle whatever crisis is happening that day. Once said crisis is solved, you go home, sleep it off, then wake up and do it again. It's revealed that the hero's father passed away some time ago and has been sending him money in the meantime, but now his nest egg has finally run out, so it's time to get a job, you bum. The hero's dad always wanted him to be what was called a Custom Robo Commander, so the hero decides to go get a job as a Custom Robo Bounty Hunter. He skips on down to the local underdog agency called Steel Hearts and meets up with his future best friend and mentor, Harry, along with his future boss and bald yelling guy, Ernest. This first interaction with Steel Hearts really helps set the tone for the game for the most part. Custom Robo is something of a light adventure story. You go to various places throughout the game and resolve various conflicts as a bounty hunter / mercenary type of character. But what I really love most about this game's story is its dialogue. I mean, this game is anime, there's no denying that, and it doesn't try to hide it. Anytime a conversation's happening, a character's portrait is constantly shifting between various expressions and they go from whispering to shouting at the drop of a hat. It's done this way so that the characters have more life to them, but it's also probably to distract you from looking at their character models during cutscenes since those are stone-faced and emotionless. The other thing this conversation establishes is how freaking hilarious this game can be. Throughout the game, the main character will be given the option to respond in conversations in several ways. There's only like 3 times in the game where this affects anything, the rest of the time it's meaningless. That being said, some of the responses can be pretty funny. For example, in the first conversation with Ernest, when it seems like he doesn't want to hire you, the hero decides to try and make a good impression, and one of the things you can tell him is that you're a great cook. To which Ernest says, "Yeah, right kid, that's great. If we ever go after the spatula bandits, we'll call you." But when it seems like all hope is lost, Ernest gets a call from a client who needs help, so he sends Harry out on the job and also has the hero tag along so the encounter will scare you off from becoming a bounty hunter. Harry and the hero reach the scene of the action where the police are fighting a bunch of robbers and... Wait, what? What is happening? Why is everyone standing around purple disco balls, and why aren't they doing it with glow sticks? It's quickly established this is what constitutes as fighting in this universe. Just like in merchandise-driven anime like Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Beyblade, literally everything in this world is solved through battling with Robos. It doesn't matter if you're a child or a frickin' police officer. If there's a conflict, you can solve it with custom Robos. The funny thing is that even though it's established that fighting with Robos can result in real-life injury, there's never any justification given to why nobody carries a frickin' gun. You're a cop. You should have a taser or a nightstick or something. Why isn't the crime just running rampant in the streets in this world? You're asked by the local lab hottie Linda to help out, at which point you stumble upon your very first Robo, the Ray-01. After Harry flubs his battle with his opponent, you jump in to finish the job. If you somehow haven't guessed it by now, Custom Robo is all about battling with robots that you customize. Throughout the game, you'll be faced with opponents in some way, shape, or form, and the two of you will have to battle it out using your miniature fighting robots. Because apparently there just isn't any other way to solve conflict in this world. I'm telling you, the first man that invents a baseball bat will be a king. A king, I say! The game plays kind of like a third-person arena-style fighting game where you're dropped into a coliseum, or Holocene as it's called, and you fight an opponent until one of you has their HP reduced to 0. The custom part of the title comes into play before you do any of that. Before each fight, you can assemble your Robo from various parts that you've collected to make a fighting machine that works for you. In-universe, characters also control their Robo through what is called diving, where a character psychically links with their Robo to control them as they fight. Wait, so does that mean I'm mentally fighting against whoever is in there with me? So like, do they feel pain or the impact of my shots? When I use a flamethrower on this small child, am I committing some sort of atrocity? Robos are made up of 5 base parts: legs, which affect movement; bombs and pods, which are explosive weapons that are used to trap your opponent and cut off their path; guns, which are your primary form of attacking; and the body, which affects things like overall stats, attack power, defense, mobility, etc. Also, it determines if you end up looking like a giant gorilla or a cute robot girl. Using these parts effectively in tandem are what determine your success. Obviously, this is the main appeal of Custom Robo. It's a game that's all about creating different combinations to use against your opponents and to beat their stupid faces into the dirt. Something that you do really have to learn later on, or else you'll start having a hard time. It's pretty easy at the beginning of the game to just rely on one good gun to get you through a battle, but eventually you'll encounter an enemy setup that counters that gun, and too bad, too sad, you're going to be spending a lot more time on your hiney. The cool thing about Custom Robo is that while there are certainly some parts that are easier to use than others, pretty much all the parts in the game are viable save for parts that are intentionally bad. The game has a heavy emphasis on customization, but it's also pretty heavily skill based. You can have a great combination of parts, but if you don't utilize them properly against your opponent's setup, or to take into account how the stage is laid out, you might have a hard time. Or on the other end of the spectrum, you could be using a bad combination of parts, but you can still have a dog in the fight provided that you're good enough. It's a pretty good balance, and aside from the weapons that are purposely overpowered, it feels like anything can compete against anyone to a degree. Every part has a purpose to play in this game. That being said, it will still take a lot of trial and error and practice to figure out what part combinations work for you and what works best in certain situations. The game tries to help with this by giving tutorials to the player before each match. Another character, usually Harry, gives you advice and helpful tips for battling in Custom Robo throughout the game. In fact, sometimes it's your opponent, the guy trying to kick your ass, that will give you helpful advice before you fight. The odd thing is that not all these tutorials are actually relevant to the fight at hand. In fact, some are just general tactics that you can learn. I mean, thanks, I guess, but do you guys want to give me something useful that I can use against Danny DeVito here? So after you kick the butts of all the robbers, you finally get to name your protagonist. Yep, you haven't had a name this entire time, and the game lets you name yourself whatever the hell you want, and you can put in these little emojis at the end. So for this playthrough, I decided to name my character Bubber, but with 2 hearts in the end, so it seems like that everyone was saying it in kind of a sweet tone. Ooh, Bubber, 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 Bubber. Linda puts in a recommendation for Bubber at Steel Hearts, and Ernest hires him as a bounty hunter. You then go home, sleep it off, and come in for your first day at work. The first couple of days in this game are pretty lighthearted. You do things like go test for a Robo Commander's license, because apparently that's what you need, break up a sitcom-like situation between a husband and wife, and have a gym training montage with Harry. You also meet more of the game's cast, like the 3rd member of your 3 Amigos team, Marcia, and the jerk rival named Evil, who leads another bounty hunter team. Gee, I wonder what his character is like. Overall, the game is fairly lighthearted at this point, and is just a happy-go-lucky adventure with oh my god! What happened to the music? What right did this game have to suddenly get serious? So it takes a few days, but this is where the game's main plot suddenly starts to kick in. You come across a man that was killed in a Chinese restaurant after fighting against some weird self-operating robo that has since fled the scene. It's also revealed here that Marcia has some sort of weird power that lets her see the last thoughts of the dead through their custom robos. Honestly, she seems like she would fit right in at the Ace Attorney series if this gig doesn't work out. Marcia goes off with the police to make a sketch of what she saw, and Bubba and Harry get set off to what? Why are we getting away from this plot? I want to know about the murder. Well, why are we fighting in some back alley gambling tournament to help some cafe owner? A man has died. He's been killed by a robot. This is infinitely more interesting. Why are we paying attention to this? I gotta admit, I do like Custom Robo's story, and especially its characters, but sometimes the pacing of the game really gets to me. Aside from the formulaic wake up, go to work, come home setup that you have for every single game day, it sometimes feels like it takes a while for the plot to really get rolling. The first few days are good because they help establish the world that you're in and some important characters are introduced, but then there's some choices in the middle of the game that kind of make it slog a little. The most standout example is right here. Right after learning about a potentially interesting plot point of a guy being murdered by a robo, you're ripped away from that thread and instead have to go compete in a tournament. Granted, this leads you to learning more about one of the main antagonistic forces in the game, the Z Syndicate, but it still feels like they were taking me away from something more interesting. The other problem the story has is that there was a lot of padding where there shouldn't be. There's several points in the game where Harry will stop you and be like, hey man, why don't you go and talk to everyone in the building? And you gotta do it. You can't advance the plot any further until you run around and talk to every single NPC in the area. They justify this sometimes by saying that you're still a rookie, so characters you're talking to often give you advice on how to play, but it still feels like the game is just extending itself artificially. Finally, there's the issue with what I like to call the anime tournament trope, and a lot of merchandise-driven anime like Yu-Gi-Oh! Or fighting anime like Dragon Ball Z and Naruto, there's always the inevitable tournament story arc. When these arcs are done well, they can be one of the best parts of the show because it gives individual characters the chance to shine, and also potential for their own personal character arcs to come to fruition. But when they're done poorly, it's often a sloppily paced mess that drags on for so long that you're just counting the minutes until the bad guys come in to crash it. And you know, it is established that custom robos are a huge part of this world's culture, so it's only natural that custom robo tournaments are held on the regular. So with that in mind, it's not out of the realm of thinking that you'll be participating in a few of them. But I feel like the game really overdoes it here. You participate in no less than 3 tournaments over the course of the story, and 2 of them happen back to back. The first one feels important because you learn about the Z Syndicate, and the third one has some major character development for some people like Marcia, but the second one just feels like padding. It just doesn't seem like there's any reason for it. Nothing important to the story happens here, and after it's done, nobody ever brings it up again except in passing. So like, why? Why did it need to happen? Just so we could have a reason to fight Marcia? Is that literally the only reason, so we could justify fighting a teammate? I guess the pacing issues be expected with how Custom Robo is set up though. Just about every single battle in Custom Robo happens at a scripted moment. There's no random fights, no random punks that will jump you on the street on your way home, no debt collectors coming to get you to pay your student loans. From beginning to end, every fight has a specific place and time, so you're just kind of going from one battle to another throughout the story. It really just feels like more like the story mode for a fighting game than a type of Japanese RPG. So after winning the second tournament, Bubba and friends are employed yet again by Linda at the Robo Lab. Linda feels like they're going to suffer another robbery soon, so she wants added security. She also hires Evil because he just seems like such a trustworthy guy. I mean, he is working for free, which is nice I guess, but why is your name Evil? Seriously, what's your story, man? What was the home life like? I feel like there may be some hidden baggage in there. So the gang splits up yet again so you can go and talk to everyone in the building, and after that reveals jack squat, you stay late to search the lab at night, at which point, surprise surprise, a break-in happens and you end up fighting this game's version of Team Rocket, the Z Syndicate. Just as a side note, I think it's funny that we never actually find out what the Z stands for. There's actually some NPC girls you can talk to at the park who will try to guess it, but it's never made known. Is it for Zumba? Is Z for Zumba? Are you guys the Zumba Syndicate? Do I just like saying Zumba? You go outside and meet a weeaboo woman that's defeated Marcia and now has her eyes set on you. So what do? Do you stand up to her like a man, or do you run away? Okay, no, you have to fight. You end up beating her, but the game is all like, nuh-uh, this didn't count, so she gets away. You question Linda about what was Z after, but all she says is, I don't know, man, go home. So you do. Then the next day rolls around and you get called back to that cafe where you fought in that first tournament, where apparently a Robo is now running amok. Finally we get to follow up on the murder from the beginning of the game. Finally we get to see what all this fuss is Oh god, I take it back. Go back to the tournament, please, go back to the tournament! But no, you can't go back. This is what you gotta do. You gotta fight this unholy abomination, and you gotta do it alone. Harry justifies it by saying that when a commander fights in a Holosseum, they often generate an arena based around their own thoughts and memories. Some people can do it, and some people can't. Bubber falls into the latter, which is the justification as to why you constantly fight in different arenas throughout the game, instead of just getting to pick your own. It's because you don't have any. So you end up fighting this thing, and if this is your first playthrough, you'll probably get your butt kicked a few times because the difficulty spike here is real. But should you manage to beat it, you'll be rewarded with another tough fight against another Z Syndicate member. This guy, who has blue hair and a mask, and who Marcia is freaking out over. Gee, I wonder who it is. It's not like he has the same hair color as Marcia, and it's not like they point out several times that Marcia has a missing brother and this guy's Holosseum is the same as hers. Nope, he's got a mask on. I'm completely stumped. I wonder what his voice sounds like in that thing. Anyway, you end up beating them, but the game is all like, nuh-uh, we didn't lose, and they just walk away like nothing happened. So Harry's sister and Linda show up, and they say some cryptic stuff, and Marcia's having an episode, and Bubber is just like, screw you guys, I'm going home. So he does. Then the next day comes around, the game is all like, hey, you know what we haven't had in a while? A tournament! So let's have one. Yeah, let's have another freaking tournament. Let's make it the longest one in the game. Let's have it 8 matches and all of them are 2v2. You know, I complain a lot about this aspect of the game, but I actually don't hate it as much as I let on. I think it's annoying and monotonous just fighting one person after another with little substance in between, but at the very least everyone has varied enough personalities that they keep it somewhat interesting. While all this is going on, Marcia's too busy having a mental breakdown to actually participate in the tournament, but you and Harry are too busy kicking ass and taking names to actually notice. It's not until Harry's older sister in the police squad points out that something's wrong with her that you should go and check on her, resulting in nothing. Great work, Bubber. Harry decides that in order to get Marcia to break out of her shell, they should switch places in the tournament, so now Marcia's your partner, and man does she ever break out of her shell by doing nothing. You end up getting to the finals without her, at which point you end up fighting Ernest and Linda, who have also entered the tournament. But yet again, Marcia is unable to compete, so she decides to stay in her own little world and cry out for her lost brother. At which point Harry decides that enough is enough and that Marcia needs to snap out of it because her brother is gone and her friends need her right now. You know, when I think about how goofy and outrageous the story can get sometimes, I can't also help but really dig Custom Robo's story. I legitimately care about the individual characters in this game and the development they get. I mean, let's just look at Steelhearts as an example. Harry starts off as a Casanova wannabe loser that hits on anything in a skirt and honestly comes across as something of a slimeball because of it. But the rest of the time he's always giving you advice before a battle because he knows you're a newbie and because he wants to help you out. It's not Bubber or Linda or any of the more stable characters that break Marcia out of her funk either. It's Harry who shows her that Marcia has friends that love her who have been supporting her all along. Then there's Marcia herself. She starts out a little distant and doesn't really mix well with others. She isn't super cold, but she's still the type of person that doesn't open up to other people very well. But by the end of the game, she's more than willing to risk her neck for her friends. She goes from being a clammed up ace to a power-hitting team player. For a game that's all about rock'em sock'em fighting robots, Custom Robo has surprisingly good character writing. So after winning the tournament and going home, you come in the next day and the police squad apparently wants to hang out with you guys, so you go down to do that. They have you take a special test to get the simulation of that horrifying monster Robo you fought earlier in the game. When you beat it, the police squad congratulates you on becoming a super special awesome Class S commander, and then tells you the truth about that Robo. Apparently it's some unknown entity called Rahu, and it once destroyed the world and the human race. You decide to go home and sleep on that wonderful nugget of information before you get a call from Ernest saying that Rahu's turned up at the Chinese restaurant from before, so you rush down there to get in just as Evil, no really, Evil, has just defeated the Robo. Bubber and friends demand that Evil turn over that Robo to the police squad, but Evil just laughs his annoying laugh and admits that he's been a bad guy all along and that he's gonna turn it over to the Z Syndicate instead. What? Evil was a bad guy? It's so surprising, and it's almost like none of you knew what his freaking name was. His name is Evil. Why are you all so stupid? So the mysterious woman from Z shows up again, and Bubber kicks her tuchus, at which point the two freaks from the last sightings of Rahu also show up, and it's revealed that the blue-haired guy, aka one of like 3 blue-haired characters in the entire game, is actually Marsha's brother. Didn't see that one coming. Marsha and Bubber beat her brother Sergey and his boss Aboro, but they say, "Nuh-uh, that battle didn't count," and they get away with Rahu anyway. Bubber and friends go deliver the bad news to the police chief, who then asks them some simple geography questions. For example, what shape is the world? Well, I mean, that's pretty obvious, Chief. It's obviously... Okay, what? Alright, well, maybe that's a translation error. So, like, what's at the end of the world? I mean, there is no end of the world because... Oh my god. They might actually be stupid. The chief commends you on your knowledge. What? And then shows you something interesting. He takes you down a bathroom elevator and then onto a train and then down a spooky space tunnel before he shows you the wall at the end of the world. And then he opens it, because who cares about your sound state of mind? It turns out that Rahu was some sort of demonic force that wiped out humanity hundreds of years ago, and now the only humans left exist in this one domed city. I'm gonna be real here, a lot of the twists that this game has, like Marsha's brother, can be seen coming a mile away, but this was not one of them. There's subtle hints throughout the story for sure, like after you beat Rahu the first time, you talk about how pretty his Colosseum was, and how the trees and grass were made of something weird. That should be the first warning bell, but most people may not pay attention to it. But if you did go to the park in this game, you would know that none of the trees are made out of wood, they're all metal. The chief admits that they need your help dealing with Z and Rahu and tells you to go home and think it over. The very next day, Ernest calls in the team and says that the police have a job for them, but honestly, he doesn't want the team to take it because even though he doesn't know what it is, he knows that the team has gotten wrapped up into something huge and dangerous and that he doesn't want to lose them. He also says that he'll let them decide because he knows that this is a decision that only they can make. Damn you, Custom Robo. You are a game about silly looking anime characters fighting with silly looking action figures. How dare you make me feel? How dare you make me care about them? How dare you? So you hop on down to the police station and inform your team to take the fight to the Z Syndicate. You get to the outside world and the team splits up where they fight their way through the Z Syndicate base. I think the funniest part about this part of the game is that you end up having a huge line of people following you at once here, so it's possible just to create a huge daisy chain of people behind you and encircle other NPCs. Eventually, however, your party starts to dwindle, as this is often where this trope is applied. By the time you finally make it to Aboro and Sergey, it's only you and Marsha up against the bad guys. Bubber makes one last appeal to Sergey's better nature and the fight begins. And then abruptly shifts as Sergey shows he's not actually a bad guy, and the three of you come up to kick Aboro's ass. But then Aboro's all, "Nuh-uh, it didn't count," and goes and dives into Rahu, and come on guys! He walked over to that console. He was right there. Why didn't you try to stop him? Why are you all so stupid? So Bubber and Marsha beat up Rahu, who then flees the scene, and then the rest of the group shows up. Sergey says that he'll explain everything. And boy, does he ever. Sergey proceeds to give a Metal Gear Solid level of an info dump in this scene, explaining everything to Z's formation, to how he joined, to what Rahu is, to how to actually defeat him. This conversation is so long that the game saves 3 different times during it, twice during and once at the very end. It turns out that Bubber's dad was the original leader of Z, but before he died, he had a very important device inside Bubber's watch and left it with him. Remember that plot point? This device is apparently a memory eraser device, you know, kind of like Men in Black. That can be used to erase Rahu's memory and keep it from getting any stronger. So you load up the device in the watch and then head out for one last showdown with Rahu. You track Rahu down to an old amusement park, and of course the dwindling party trope is once again in effect. You make your way deep into the park fighting dudes in a bathroom, dudes in a carousel, and then dudes jumping out of the floor. All before you end up fighting the queen of the dudes, Eliza. It turns out that Eliza, aka that woman you've seen before, actually has a twin sister that nobody ever mentioned. She shows up and it takes you and Harry working together to bring them down, since Marsha gets OKO'd early on. But then she gets better. Bubber and his friends confront Rahu one last time, and he's grown stronger than ever before. But with the memory erasure device, they can finally have a chance of ending this for good. Harry shouts out for the group to dive, and the climactic final battle begins. Wait, this is gonna be 3v1 final boss? Pfft, no problem. We had a 3v1 fight earlier, and we kicked Oboro's crusty ass. How much harder can this... What the crap, this fight's hard! No, seriously, this is probably one of the hardest bosses in the entire game. You might be fighting a 3v1 here, but Rahu can easily mop the floor with any of you. If at any moment Rahu focused on me, I ran for my freaking life until he targeted someone else. There might be 3 of you, but this still is not a fair fight by any means. But through blood, tears, sweats, and more tears, you can finally beat Rahu, and the gang all comes together one last time to decide what to do. Bubba and his friends decide that it's time for this charade to end and that the people need to know the truth about Rahu and the outside world. The credits roll and the game ends. Or at least you would think that. There's actually a playable epilogue mode that wraps up a few loose ends and a giant tournament mode, but I think we can leave that for another day. You know, looking back now, I probably beat Custom Robo a dozen times as a kid, but playing it as an adult, I took a lot of breaks, and it wasn't just because I was busy or anything, it was because the pacing of the game was really weird. I still love the story of Custom Robo, sure, but it wasn't perfect. It had a share of problems, and I totally understand why people might have been turned off to it. The game has its share of problems, for sure. The story pacing is an annoying issue, as is the inability to save manually, and if you're the type of person that only cares about the gameplay, you'll just be skipping through the dialogue as fast as you can to get to the fighting parts anyway. But honestly, for a game that uses a bunch of cliched anime tropes, it does a pretty great job of developing its characters and writing its story. The funny moments are genuinely funny, and the serious moments had me paying extra attention. Not to mention that Rahu as antagonistic force was particularly well done. Despite all the jokes and silly moments that were had, anytime Rahu is on screen or is the subject of discussion, absolutely no laughs were being had. It was meant to be an intimidating force of nature that everyone was scared out of their wits of, and the writing really reflected that. And of course the gameplay was a huge part of the game too. There's so many different combinations that you can create with your Robo that it's easy to sink time into this part of the game. After Battle Revolution, the only other game made was Custom Robo Arena on the Nintendo DS. After that, there hasn't been another Custom Robo game in 10 years. Which is a shame too, because other games that came out of the Smash Bros. Craze like Fire Emblem have been going pretty strong. But no love for Custom Robo. I personally would love to see a revival of Custom Robo, but that's probably never going to happen. It's a shame too, because I love me my robots. I'm gonna be honest, I didn't know how to end this one.
What do you want?
Oh, I've waited a long time for this day. Now I want to enjoy this moment.
What's with these guys? It's like one of my Japanese animes.